No one wakes up one day and realizes they've become a puppet. It happens quietly. Through compromise. Through patience that lasts too long. Through love that slowly demands more and gives less. Most men don't lose control because they are weak. They lose it because they are good, trusting, loyal, willing to endure. And that is exactly what makes them vulnerable. These tactics are not obvious. They don't look like manipulation. They look like love, concern, sensitivity, intimacy. Until one day, you notice something is gone. Your certainty. Your boundaries. Your sense of self. If you've ever felt confused instead of calm in a relationship. If you've ever tried harder only to feel smaller. If you've ever wondered how love turned into pressure. This is for you. Not to blame. Not to accuse. But to see clearly. Because the moment a man understands the game, he stops playing it. And what follows is not anger, but freedom. Welcome to the channel, Stoic Love Wisdom. This is where you will find valuable lessons and tips to help you build a truly lasting love. In today's video, we will explore 7 dark tricks women use to turn men into puppets, with real stories and insight. Don't miss the advice that can change the way you perceive and live in love. You will definitely feel more comfortable when you find a quiet place and put on your headphones. Let yourself relax and be ready to receive the positive messages in today's video. Are you ready to start this journey? Let's start together. Dark tactic number 1, she gives you hope, then takes it away. I didn't learn this from books. I learned it from silence. From the pause between messages that once arrived instantly. From warmth that slowly turned into distance, without explanation. From realizing I was working harder for less, and calling it love. This is the first and most effective dark tactic, controlled hope. At the beginning, she gives you just enough to believe. Affection. Attention. Admiration. She looks at you like you matter, like you are chosen. And that is where the hook is set. Because once a man feels chosen, he invests. He opens. He commits his time, his energy, his future. Then, subtly, the withdrawal begins. Not all at once. That would be too obvious. It happens in small doses. Replies take longer. Compliments disappear. Plans become uncertain. Warmth turns conditional. She doesn't say, "I'm pulling away." She lets your nervous system figure it out. And that's the genius of it. A man hates uncertainty more than rejection. If you reject him clearly, he can walk away. But if you confuse him, he stays. Now his mind starts working against him. Did I do something wrong? If I try harder, maybe it'll go back to how it was. I just need to fix this. And just like that, the power shifts. She hasn't chained you. She hasn't demanded obedience. She has simply placed your emotional stability outside of your control. From a Stoic perspective, this is where the mistake happens. You begin to attach your peace to something external. Her moods, her responses, her approval. Epictetus warned us about this centuries ago. If you want to be free, do not wish that events happen as you want, but wish them to happen as they do. But in love, men forget philosophy. We start negotiating with reality. We chase the past version of her. The version that laughed more, touched more, wanted more. And here's the brutal truth most men learn too late. The hope is not meant to be fulfilled. It is meant to be maintained. Because hope keeps you trying. Hope keeps you available. Hope keeps you obedient without commands. Occasionally, she will give you a small reward. A warm message. A night of closeness. A reminder of what you used to have. Just enough to reset your belief. This is not love. This is emotional rationing. A Stoic man sees this clearly. He understands one unshakable rule. What is inconsistent cannot be trusted. Love that disappears to test you is not love. Affection that must be earned through anxiety is manipulation. A centered man does not beg for warmth. He does not chase mixed signals. He does not compete with silence. Why? Because his identity does not depend on being chosen. Here is the quiet power move most men never realize. The moment hope becomes a weapon, you walk away. Not in anger. Not with accusations. But with dignity. You return control to yourself. You stop asking, "How do I get her back?" And start asking, "Why am I tolerating emotional instability?" Stoic love is not cold. It is self-respecting. A woman who truly desires you does not confuse you. She does not pull away to feel powerful. She does not make you earn basic human warmth. And if she does, you don't fight the tactic. You exit the game. Because the man who controls his hope can never be turned into a puppet. Dark tactic number 2, she makes you feel like you're never enough. This tactic doesn't break men loudly. It breaks them quietly, from the inside. No shouting. No direct insults. Just a slow erosion of self-belief. I've watched good men fall into this trap. Strong men. Capable men. Men who were confident before love entered the room. And afterward, they started apologizing for existing. Here's how it works. She never says, "You're not enough." That would be too crude. Instead, she says things like, "I just expected more from you. I thought you'd understand me better. You're great, but..." That "but" is the knife. Because it suggests something essential is missing. Something vague enough that you can never fully fix it. From a psychological standpoint, this is devastating. Why? Because a man is wired to improve. When faced with a problem, he looks for solutions. So when she implies deficiency, he goes to work on himself. For her. He reads more. Earns more. Listens more. Tries harder. But the finish line keeps moving. No matter what he does, it's never quite right. If he's assertive, he's too cold. If he's emotional, he's too weak. If he's busy, he doesn't care enough. If he's available, he has no ambition. And slowly, his sense of self collapses into a single question. Who do I need to become to be worthy of love? That question is poison. Because love was never meant to be earned through self-erasure. A Stoic understands something most men don't realize in time. Any relationship that requires you to shrink, doubt, or abandon your core is not growth, it is decay. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you constantly think you're not enough, you become a man who acts like he isn't. And that's when control is complete. Because once a man believes he is fundamentally flawed, he will tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, emotional crumbs, all in the hope of proving his worth. This tactic works best on good men. Men with conscience, empathy, and accountability. She knows you will blame yourself before you blame her. And here's the cruel irony. The more you try to become enough, the less attractive you become. Why? Because confidence cannot coexist with self-abandonment. A centered man does not audition for affection. He does not constantly self-correct to avoid disapproval. He does not hand over the authority to define his value. Stoicism teaches a brutal but liberating truth. Your worth is not negotiated in someone else's emotional marketplace. You are either respected, or you leave. A woman who truly admires you does not keep you in a permanent state of inadequacy. She does not compare you to imaginary men. She does not make you feel replaceable to keep you compliant. And when a man finally wakes up, the shift is silent, but seismic. He stops asking, "What am I doing wrong?" and starts asking, "Why am I with someone who benefits from my self-doubt?" That question ends the manipulation. Because the moment you reclaim the authority to define yourself, her power disappears. Stoic love is not about perfection. It is about self-possession. You know your strengths. You acknowledge your flaws. And you refuse to let anyone weaponize them against you. Here's the rule I live by now: learn the hard way. Any woman who needs you to feel small to feel secure is not a partner, she is a test. And tests are meant to be passed. Or walked away from. In love, sometimes we don't need too many promises, but just a little understanding and a heart that knows how to listen. It is the experiences, both happy and sad, that help us mature and know how to love more fully. Here, I want to contemplate those things with you, so that each step in the journey of love becomes more clear-headed and peaceful. If you feel that what I share is valuable, please click like to support this video. And if this is your first visit, please click subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss the next insightful perspectives on love. I also really want to hear from you. What do you like most about today's story? Leave a comment below, because who knows, your experience might be a great source of encouragement for someone else who is listening. And now, let's continue to explore what's waiting for you. Dark tactic number 3, she plays the victim to control you. This one doesn't use fear. It uses guilt. And guilt is far more effective. Because a man will fight fear. But he will kneel to guilt, especially if he believes he caused the pain. I've seen this tactic destroy strong men without leaving a single bruise. No raised voice. No visible abuse. Just a quiet sentence that changes everything. "I guess I'm just too much for you." And suddenly, the man is on trial. She doesn't accuse you directly. She suffers. She sighs. She withdraws. She looks hurt, and lets your imagination do the rest. That's the trap. Because a good man has a built-in flaw. He takes responsibility even when none is assigned. So when she becomes the victim, he becomes the perpetrator, automatically. Let's be clear. Real vulnerability is honest, specific, and accountable. Manipulative victimhood is vague, emotional, and blame-shifting. A Stoic learns to tell the difference. When she plays the victim, notice the pattern. There is pain, but no solution. There is emotion, but no clarity. There is suffering, but no ownership. Everything is felt, nothing is resolved. And the message beneath it all is simple. If you don't do what I want, you are hurting me. Now you're no longer choosing. You're compensating. You start adjusting your behavior not because it's right, but because you want the guilt to stop. You apologize for tone, for timing, for things you didn't intend, or even do. And here's where the Stoic alarm should sound. Epictetus warned. If anyone can make you angry, they become your master. The same is true of guilt. The moment someone can control how you feel about yourself, they control your actions. The most dangerous version of this tactic is emotional ambiguity. She never says what she wants. She only shows you how bad she feels. So you guess. And guessing is exhausting. Because you're not solving a problem. You're managing an emotional climate. Over time, something subtle happens to the man. He stops expressing himself honestly. He walks on eggshells. He suppresses his needs, because they cause pain. And that is the quiet death of intimacy. A relationship where one person is always fragile forces the other to become invisible. Stoicism does not teach emotional coldness. It teaches emotional responsibility. A Stoic man understands. Your emotions are real. But they are yours to manage. He does not accept guilt for feelings he did not create. He does not confuse empathy with submission. Here's the line most men never learn to draw. You can care without carrying. You can listen without surrendering your spine. You can be compassionate without self-erasure. A woman who truly wants connection speaks plainly. She doesn't dramatize suffering to gain leverage. She doesn't use tears as a steering wheel. And when a man finally sees this tactic for what it is, his response changes. He doesn't argue. He doesn't defend. He doesn't over-explain. He simply says, I hear how you feel. I'm not responsible for managing your emotions. That sentence ends most manipulations instantly. Because victimhood requires a villain. And the Stoic man refuses the role. Stoic love is steady, not reactive. Clear, not guilt-driven. Present, but not enslaved. Here's the final truth, learned painfully, then peacefully. Anyone who must be wounded to be powerful is not ready for love. And the man who understands this can no longer be controlled by tears. Dark tactic number 4, control through silence. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is communication with a blade. I learned that the hard way. Not from arguments, but from the days after. Messages left unseen. Calls unanswered. Questions met with nothing. No explanation. No closure. Just distance. This tactic works because silence forces a man inward. And most men are not prepared for what they find there. When she goes silent, she doesn't shout. She doesn't accuse. She lets your mind attack you. You start replaying conversations. Was it my tone? Did I say too much? If I reach out again, will I look weak? And soon, silence becomes louder than any argument. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The disturbance comes not from the thing itself, but from your judgment about it." Silence creates a vacuum. And the mind rushes to fill it with self-blame. That is why this tactic is so powerful. Because she doesn't have to say, "You disappointed me." Your anxiety says it for her. The most dangerous part is the duration. A few hours can be normal. A day might be cooling off. But extended, unexplained silence is not space. It is punishment. Punishment without charges. And a man under punishment wants relief. So he reaches out. Apologizes, even without clarity. Promises to do better, without knowing what better means. And just like that, the dynamic shifts. She didn't ask for power. You handed it to her, hoping the silence would end. This is where Stoic discipline matters. A Stoic man understands one essential rule. Anything that requires you to abandon your self-respect for relief is not worth the relief. Silence used with love is restorative. Silence used for control is destabilizing. You can tell the difference by one question. Does this silence invite understanding, or obedience? If the silence ends only when you submit, you are not in a relationship, you are in training. The longer this continues, the more conditioned you become. Your nervous system learns. Silence equals danger. Compliance equals safety. This is emotional conditioning, not intimacy. And here's the cruel irony most men miss. The man who fears silence becomes predictable. And predictability is control. Stoic love teaches something radically different. You do not chase silence. You respect it. And observe what it reveals. When someone withdraws without explanation, they reveal not strength, but incapacity. An adult addresses conflict. A manipulator avoids it, and waits for you to fold. When I finally understood this, my response changed. I stopped filling the silence. Stopped apologizing into the void. Stopped negotiating with absence. Not out of pride. Out of clarity. And something interesting happened. Either the silence broke, with honesty. Or it never broke. And I gained my freedom. Both outcomes were victories. Stoicism does not demand coldness. It demands self-command. You do not react to silence with panic. You respond with boundaries. Here is the line that ends this tactic completely. I'm open to communication. I'm not available for punishment. Say it once. Then mean it. Because the man who is at peace with silence can never be controlled by it. And the woman who needs silence to dominate loses her power the moment it stops working. Dark tactic number 5, isolating you from your world. This tactic doesn't feel dark at first. It feels like intimacy. That's why it works. It begins softly. I just don't feel comfortable with those friends. Why do you need them when you have me? They don't really understand you like I do. Nothing aggressive. Nothing unreasonable, on the surface. But isolation never starts with chains. It starts with preferences. A Stoic man pays attention to patterns, not words. And the pattern here is always the same. Your time with others becomes an inconvenience. Your independence becomes a threat. Your world slowly shrinks, and hers becomes the center. At first, you compromise. You skip a gathering. You cancel a plan. You reassure her. You tell yourself. This is what commitment looks like. But commitment does not require disappearance. Here's the psychological truth most men miss. The more isolated a man becomes, the easier he is to shape. Without friends, there is no reflection. Without perspective, there is no correction. Without a world outside the relationship, there is no escape. That is the goal. Not because she is evil, but because control thrives in closed systems. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." Isolation removes that safeguard. When your only emotional feedback comes from one source, that source defines reality. If she's displeased, the world feels wrong. If she approves, the world feels safe. That's not love. That's dependency. And dependency is fragile. Notice how the isolation escalates. First, it's friends she doesn't like. Then, it's family who don't support the relationship. Finally, it's your personal time that feels like betrayal. And if you resist, she reframes it. You're choosing them over me. If you loved me, you'd understand. I just want us. The word us becomes a cage. A Stoic man sees through this illusion. He understands that love expands life. Control contracts it. A woman who truly wants partnership does not compete with your world. She integrates into it. She doesn't ask you to abandon your roots to prove loyalty. She doesn't require isolation to feel secure. And here is the hardest truth for many men. The moment you give up your world, you give up your leverage. Because if she is all you have, you cannot walk away. No matter how badly you are treated. Stoic discipline demands one thing above all. Never place all sources of meaning in one place. Your friends keep you honest. Your work keeps you grounded. Your solitude keeps you centered. Take those away, and you become malleable. When I recognized this tactic in my own life, I didn't argue. I simply restored balance. I showed up for my friends. I maintained my routines. I protected my independence, calmly. And the response told me everything. Healthy love adapted. Manipulative love resisted. That resistance was the answer. Stoic love does not beg permission to exist. It does not apologize for having a life. Here is the boundary that ends isolation attempts immediately. I choose you, but I don't abandon myself. Say it without anger. Say it without explanation. Because a man who remains connected to his world cannot be enclosed. And a woman who needs isolation to feel powerful reveals her fear, not her strength. Love is actually like a mirror reflecting the inner self. When we are calm enough, we will realize that every challenge, every silence carries a valuable lesson. And that is what I want to convey through each story on this channel. If you feel that these shares bring value, please leave a like to support the channel. And don't forget to subscribe, because who knows, one day, just a small idea from these videos can change the way you look at love, at yourself. Let's continue with me, because there are many interesting things waiting for you to discover. Dark tactic number 6, reward and punishment through affection. This tactic is not emotional chaos. It is emotional training. And the most dangerous part? Most men never realize they're being trained. At first, it looks like chemistry. When you act the way she likes, she's warm, affectionate, soft, present. When you don't, she cools down. No explosion. No explanation. Just a shift in temperature. And slowly, your nervous system learns the pattern. This is not accidental. It is behavioral conditioning. Psychology calls it intermittent reinforcement. The Stoics called it enslavement to externals. Marcus Aurelius warned. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. But affection feels internal, so men miss the danger. Here's how it takes hold. She never explicitly tells you what earns affection. You figure it out through trial and error. You notice. When you agree, she's loving. When you comply, she's close. When you assert boundaries, she withdraws. Soon, your behavior changes automatically. You hesitate before speaking. You soften your opinions. You abandon confrontation, not because it's wrong, but because it costs warmth. That's the trap. You're no longer acting from values. You're acting to avoid punishment. And punishment doesn't look like anger. It looks like cold replies, reduced intimacy, emotional distance. Enough to hurt. Not enough to confront. A Stoic man understands a hard truth. Affection that must be earned through obedience is not affection, it is leverage. Love offered freely strengthens character. Love offered conditionally reshapes it. Over time, something subtle happens. You stop asking, "Is this right?" and start asking, "Will this upset her?" That is the moment control is complete. Because fear of emotional loss now governs your choices. And here's the cruel paradox. The more trained you become, the less respect you receive. Why? Because respect cannot coexist with submission disguised as love. A woman who uses this tactic may not even be conscious of it. But intent doesn't change impact. You become predictable. Manageable. Safe, in the worst way. Stoicism cuts through this illusion brutally. A Stoic does not attach his inner state to rewards he does not control. He understands. Affection is welcome. Withdrawal is information. not a command. When affection disappears, a Stoic man does not chase it. He observes what triggered the withdrawal. And if the trigger was self-respect, that tells him everything. Here's the moment that breaks the conditioning. You behave consistently, regardless of the reward. You speak truth even if warmth disappears. You hold boundaries even if intimacy pauses. You remain centered even when affection is withheld. And something fascinating happens. Either the affection returns, healthier, freer. Or the manipulation collapses, exposed. Both outcomes are victories. Stoic love is not transactional. It is principled. You do not barter your spine for closeness. You do not exchange authenticity for comfort. Here is the rule I live by now. Any affection that disappears when you act with integrity was never meant for you. The man who understands this cannot be trained. Because his peace is not rewarded. It is self-generated. And the moment affection loses its power as a leash, it can finally become what it should have been all along. A choice. Not a weapon. Dark tactic number 7, she makes you believe you have no other choice. This tactic doesn't use anger. It doesn't use silence. It doesn't even use affection. It uses fear disguised as truth. Not the fear of losing her, but the fear of being nothing without her. I've seen men endure years of emotional erosion under this illusion. Because once a man believes he has no alternatives, he stops resisting. It starts subtly. Not with threats, but with suggestions. No one will ever understand you like I do. You're lucky I accept you as you are. Other women wouldn't put up with this. Each sentence sounds almost reassuring. But together, they build a cage. The message sinks in slowly. Without me, you are unlovable. And once that belief takes root, control is complete. Stoicism teaches us something brutally simple. Slavery begins in the mind. Epictetus was once a slave. And he understood freedom better than most free men ever will. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This tactic removes self-mastery by replacing it with dependency. Your confidence shrinks. Your standards lower. Your future narrows to one option. You stop asking, "Is this healthy?" And start telling yourself, "This is the best I can do." That is not love. That is learned helplessness. And here's the cruel irony. The more a man believes he has no options, the more unattractive he becomes. Because neediness repels what confidence once attracted. A Stoic man understands a truth that breaks this spell instantly. Choice is internal before it is external. You don't need 10 women interested in you to have options. You need one thing only. The willingness to walk away. Not in anger. Not in drama. But in self-respect. A woman who truly loves you does not convince you you're replaceable. She convinces you you're respected. She does not isolate you from possibility. She expands your sense of it. And when a man finally wakes up to this tactic, something shifts. He stops arguing for the relationship. Stops justifying mistreatment. Stops shrinking to be tolerated. He begins rebuilding quietly. His body. His competence. His independence. His inner authority. And here's the part no one talks about. The moment a man believes he can leave, the dynamic changes instantly. Either she adjusts because the control is gone, or she panics because the illusion is broken. Both outcomes reveal the truth. Stoic love is rooted in abundance of self, not scarcity of options. You don't stay because you're trapped. You stay because you choose to. And that choice must be renewable every day. Here is the final Stoic rule that ends all manipulation. Never stay where your absence is unthinkable, but your presence is taken for granted. The man who knows he can stand alone cannot be convinced he has no other choice. Because he already made the hardest one. To belong to himself first. And that is the only position from which love can exist without chains. If you want, next I can refine this into voiceover scripts. Create hooks and closings for each tactic. Adapt it for YouTube long form or shorts. Or sharpen the language even more for a viral Stoic channel. Just tell me. Here is a Stoic, grounded conclusion, written in the same seasoned male voice. Calm, sharp, and resolute. No anger. No bitterness. Only clarity. Conclusion. These 7 tactics are not about women. They are about power without responsibility. They work only on one kind of man. The man who has not yet learned to govern himself. Because manipulation does not begin with another person. It begins where a man hands over authority over his peace, his worth, and his direction. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it names. They taught us that freedom is not the absence of attachment, but the absence of dependence. A man who needs validation is easy to bend. A man who fears loss is easy to command. A man who confuses love with anxiety is already halfway enslaved. This is not a call to become cold. It is a call to become centered. Stoic love is not about emotional armor. It is about emotional sovereignty. You can love deeply without surrendering your spine. You can commit without shrinking. You can care without carrying what was never yours. Every tactic described here collapses in the presence of one thing. Self-mastery. The man who knows his values does not chase mixed signals. The man who respects himself does not beg for warmth. The man who can walk alone is never trapped. And here is the final truth most men learn too late, unless they choose not to. The goal is not to avoid being controlled by others. The goal is to become ungovernable from the inside. When your peace no longer depends on approval. When your worth is not negotiated through affection. When your direction is chosen, not reacted to. Manipulation loses its language. Love becomes a choice again. Respect becomes mutual. And power returns to where it always belonged. Within. That is Stoic love. Quiet. Grounded. Unshakable. And the man who lives there can never be turned into a puppet again. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. Hopefully the sharing about love and lessons from this video will help you have new thoughts and find empathy. If you find the video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and share with those around you. Each of us has our own stories about love, and I'm happy to explore them with you. See you in the next videos. Wishing you a wonderful day filled with love.